Welcome to this week's Iraq in 7 Minutes, brought to you by Epic. I'm Epic's director, Eric Gustafson, reporting from Arabian Standard Time. And with me from across the pond is Epic's lead researcher and analyst, Omar al-Nadawi. So how's the weather over there right now?
Hi, Eric. It's a beautiful and crisp fall day here in DC.
Nice, nice. So autumn here, it's feeling a little bit like summer. So our main topics of analysis today is the legislative elections in Kurdistan. But first, here are the latest headlines. The head of Iraq's Integrity Commission, Haider Hanoun, has been sacked amid his ongoing row with senior members of the judiciary. His replacement is Mohammed Ali al-Lami, described as the longest serving director general in the commission. Over the past week, Iraqi air and ground forces hit ISIS operations in Salah ad-Din and Anbar, and the Himreen Mountains, which straddle Kirkuk, Diyala, and Salah ad-Din, reportedly killing 23 militants, including the group's top commander in Iraq. In Nasiriyah, clashes erupted between locals and security forces over the recent arrests of activists, though demonstrations have since calmed following tribal mediation. Additionally, the office of the Saudi-owned NBC network in Baghdad was attacked and its license revoked after airing content that reportedly incited anger among pro-militia groups. So now turning to you, Omar. On October 20th, voters in the Kurdistan region of Iraq elected a new parliament. With a 72% turnout, early results indicate the KDP leads, with the PUK winning the second largest number of seats, followed by the New Generation and other third parties. In terms of the electoral law and administration of these elections, was anything different this time around? And what can you say about the preliminary results and what comes next?
There are actually significant differences in these elections. Back in February, Iraq's federal Supreme Court intervened by issuing a ruling that changed a lot of the provisions of the electoral law and system in the Kurdistan region, basically reducing the number of lawmakers in the regional legislature from 111 to 100 by removing the so-called minority quota seats, which uh, are seen to generally benefit the KDP. And I think it's important to mention that this ruling was based on a lawsuit that was filed by the KDP's rival, the PUK, the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan. The court also ruled that the regional election commission, which is formed by the KRG, by the Kurdistan Regional Government, was no longer valid because the term of the regional parliament had expired. The court asked Iraq's Federal Election Commission, IHEC, to run the election. So this is the first time that a regional election in the Kurdistan region is handled by IHEC, and it is also featured heavy interference by the Federal Supreme Court in shaping the electoral districts and the distribution of seats. Of course, this led to strong objections from the KDP at the time, which threatened to boycott the election. So there were several months of uncertainty about what was going on. Eventually, there was a compromise, and a small number of the quota seats, five, in fact, were reinstated. And the KDP decided to go on with the elections. In terms of the results themselves, I think the significant takeaway from this is high turnout relatively. This is significantly higher than in 2018, when 60% only 60% of voters turned out. And there were actually a lot of expectations that turnout this time would be even lower. In 2021, when the Iraqi federal legislative elections took place, the turnout level in the Kurdistan region was about 36%. So the fact that 72% of voters cast their ballots, keeping in mind that not all of eligible voters were actually registered to vote. So there may be a little bit of discrepancy here. But the fact that a large number, over 70%, voted I think, is significant. In terms of the results, the outcome of the elections, really not a lot of changes there fundamentally to the political map. We saw perhaps small relative gains for the PUK, even though KDP maintained its dominance, winning perhaps or potentially winning a plurality of seats within parliament. No one is going to win a majority, but we also saw a little bit of fragmentation, or a second level of fragmentation in the results, with Goran, for example, one of the opposition parties, uh, having an offshoot compete against it. So that really significantly diluted the results of Goran. And we also saw an offshoot from the PUK. This is a legacy of the conflict between the Obad and Bafel Talabani branch of the party and the Lahore Talabani branch of the party. So Lahore and his group were able to steal some votes from PUK proper, if we may call it that. In terms of next steps, it seems that probably not much is going to change, in that the KDP has extended an olive branch, despite all the rhetoric, all the negative and hostile rhetoric in the campaigning period. The KDP is saying, well, everyone is welcome to join the government, and we're open to talks with everyone. Uh, the PUK was saying, well, this time we're going to take over the government, we're going to take it back from the KDP. This is not going to happen. The question is, are we going to see another, weak coalition government where the KDP and PUK are basically together but apart? Or are we going to see the KDP try to build a coalition with some of the smaller parties, New Generation perhaps, maybe, the Islamist party, and try to shun the PUK? Of course, I think everyone who is familiar with Kurdistan knows that this involves risks of further breakdown in the structures of, what's left of the structures of the KRG as a unified government. So still too early to tell, but I think the early indications point to a likely continuation of the status quo, where the two parties come together, but really in a hostile partnership to form the next iteration of the KRG.
Cool. Okay. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, Omar, for that analysis. We'll be continuing to follow developments as we go into the government formation phase of the new parliament in the Kurdistan region. A quick shout out. As you all know, October is the anniversary of the Tishreen movement. This was our report that we brought out a number of years ago. There's an excellent update in terms of the role of youth in creating change in Iraq and working to create that change, and that's by Chatham House. I highly recommend this report. Omar and I have both read it. Iraq's Young Agents of Change by Haider al-Shakari. It's really interesting because it recognizes that young people are continuing to work to create change, even if it's not by direct confrontation, instead through entrepreneurship, through political activism, through civil society. So I highly recommend it, and looking at the recommendations there for international stakeholders like some of you who are watching us today. So thanks again for joining us for Iraq in 7 minutes. For more news and analysis, go to enablingpeace.org. If you value this content, please take a minute to like and subscribe to our channel. Otherwise, until next time, maslama.